All right, let's talk about good ideas. Where do they actually come from? I mean, we've all been sold this romantic story about innovation, right? The story of a sudden, brilliant breakthrough. But what if that whole story is a myth? We're going to dive into the fascinating work of author Stephen Johnson to find out how innovation really happens.
Yeah, let's just start right there. How does it actually happen? I mean, seriously, if I say the word invention to you, what's the very first picture that pops into your head?
I'm willing to bet it's something like this, a lone genius, maybe a little eccentric, toiling away in a lab or a dusty study. And then, bam, out of nowhere, this lightning bolt of insight, a single brilliant moment.
You know the one, the classic eureka moment. Archimedes jumping out of the bathtub, Newton getting conked on the head by an apple. It's a great story, It's dramatic, it's memorable. But here's the thing, what if it's just not true? And this is exactly where author Stephen Johnson steps in. He makes this really bold argument that this whole story of the lone genius isn't just a little bit off. He says it's a dangerous myth. It's a fundamental misunderstanding of how creativity and progress actually work. Okay, so first things first, let's really tear down this idea of the eureka moment. Because here's the crucial shift in thinking. Ideas, they're almost never single events. They're not these isolated moments in time. Johnson's research shows they're much more like networks. They form slowly, over a long period, connecting little bits and pieces of other ideas. It's a process, not a flash in the pan. So if it's not a single event, then what is it? Well, Johnson has identified these 7 key patterns. Think of it like a recipe for creating an environment where innovation can just happen. Let's dig into some of the most important ones. Okay, this first one is huge. It's a concept he calls the adjacent possible. Think about it like this. You're in a house. Innovation isn't about magically teleporting to a castle in the sky. It's about opening the next door, then the next, then the one after that. You can only invent things using the building blocks, the spare parts, the ideas that are available to you right now. And here's a perfect example to make that concrete. Why wasn't YouTube invented in, say, 1990? It's not because nobody had the imagination. It's because the adjacent possible simply wasn't there yet. The essential building blocks, things like widespread high-speed internet, good video compression, web browsers that could even handle video, they just didn't exist. So you need these building blocks. Where do you find them? Well, Johnson says you find them in what he calls liquid networks. These are environments where ideas can flow freely. Picture a bustling city or a vibrant coral reef. Places where tons of different ideas and people can just collide, connect, and combine in really unexpected ways. And what are the things bumping into each other in these networks? They're not usually fully formed, brilliant ideas. No, they're what he calls the slow hunch. A great idea almost never arrives fully formed in a flash. It usually starts as this incomplete feeling, a hunch that something could be different, or that a piece is missing. And that little hunch needs time, it needs to marinate, and then it needs to collide with someone else's hunch to become something real. And this leads us perfectly into another cool concept, exaptation. It's a bit of a sciencey word, but the idea is simple. It's when a tool or an idea that was developed for one thing gets brilliantly repurposed for something totally different. I mean, think about it. Feathers probably evolved for warmth, right? But then they got exapted for flight. Or in human history, look at Johannes Gutenberg. He took a screw press, a tool used for making wine, and adapted it to create the printing press. Mind-blowing, right? Okay, so these are great patterns, but let's see how they actually play out in the real world. This isn't just theory. You can see these ideas written all over our history. Take the story of glass. It's this incredible, unintended chain reaction. The invention of the printing press suddenly creates a massive demand for eyeglasses because a whole lot more people are reading and realizing, hey, I can't see so well. This huge demand drives all this new innovation in lens making, which in turn directly leads to the invention of the microscope and the telescope. Those two inventions completely revolutionized science. Nobody, and I mean nobody, who was making glass in the beginning saw that coming. Or look at how modern sanitation was born. Again, not one single invention. It was a process. It starts with a huge problem, cholera outbreaks in these new, crowded cities. Then you have Dr. John Snow, who has this slow hunch. He starts mapping out the cases, and this data leads him to a single, contaminated water pump on Broad Street in London. He proves how the disease spreads, and boom, it sparks a public health revolution. Johnson has this wonderful name for these kinds of unforeseen ripple effects. He calls it the hummingbird effect. It's this idea that an innovation in one field can have these massive, unexpected consequences in a totally different one, just like how the evolution of flowers completely changed the flight patterns of birds and insects.
And one of the best examples of this in technology, the vacuum tube. It was originally built for radios, right? To amplify signals. But that exact same piece of tech was accepted. It was repurposed to act as a switch. And that made it the fundamental building block for the very first electronic computers.
Okay, so this is all really cool history, but what does it actually mean for us, right now? How can we use these ideas? Let's talk about building your own personal coral reef for ideas.
And this is the really empowering part of this whole way of thinking. If innovation is a process, well, that means it's a process we can all get better at. We can cultivate it in our own lives, in our teams, in our companies.
So how do you do it? The key is to create your own liquid network. It means you got to read outside your expertise. You got to share those slow hunches, those half-baked ideas instead of hoarding them. You have to embrace serendipity, those happy accidents. Connect with people who are totally different from you, and always be on the lookout for how an old tool can solve a brand new problem.
When you boil it all down, the biggest takeaway is really a shift in mindset. We have to stop thinking of genius as some magical quality that a few people are just born with. It's not. It's a practice. It's a space you create. It's a network you build and nurture.
And that leaves us with one final thought to chew on. When you think about the adjacent possible in your own world, in your job, your hobbies, your passions, what's the next door room you haven't opened yet? What possibility is just one step away, just waiting for you to explore it?